Former inmates of Reddit, how are rapists/pedophiles really treated once in prison? Usually they are segregated into their own special housing units. More often than not they are left alone. Most of the moderately intelligent ones will never tell anyone why they are really in prison in the first place. They lie and say they robbed someone or something. When I first went to prison at 19, my cellmate told me he was in for breaking and entering. While he was out of the cell on a call out, someone dropped off some paperwork under the door for him. I looked at it, only to make sure it wasn't for me, and I saw his charge listed clearly on the paperwork as sexual assault in the first degree. Intrigued, I read a little more, and it seemed he was actually in prison for sodomizing his little brother. I'll let it be known, and he was eventually beaten fairly severely in the shower. I'm still conflicted about it. He probably deserved it, but I hate the fact that I was the cause of it. I did several years in several different security level prisons, but only a small amount of time in high security facilities. The violent criminals are normally kept separate from the drug etc. Criminals and anyone can tell you any kind of lie they want about what they are in for. In my experience, prison is quite unlike what people on the outside think it is. People clique up and pretty much keep to themselves. The pedophiles and rapists can also normally find some group to be in. People seem to think that there is rampant rape in prison, but believe me, there are enough people in there who want to have sex that rape is not really necessary. Just slip off to the showers when the lights go out. Honestly, as far as the media's depiction of prison life, Orange is the New Black is the closest thing I've seen to my experience. Not an inmate myself, but I just asked a friend who did 4,5 years. This was his answer. Usually nobody beside you, and the administration knows why you are in. And if your case didn't hit the media, you can make up whatever reason you want when asked. The guards will only know when you are a threat to safety or endangered yourself. Normal rapists usually don't have to deal with much trouble, unless they seem to be an easy victim for sexual assault. So the "you are scum and we'll give you a swig of your own medicine" is basically just the jail version of no homo. A pedo will get real trouble if anyone finds out. This can be everything between being excluded from social interaction to being beaten up, or raped, or even killed. It still depends on his ability to protect himself against physical violence, but let's face it, most people can't do shit against a group who wants to fuck them up. Here it is the same. The bringing justice by doing the same to him is mostly an excuse for sexually frustrated inmates to have sex with another man without being gay. At least that is how it is in German jails. My little brother, who is handicapped, FAS, was convicted of rape and kidnapping of a minor. He weighs 90 pounds and is pretty weak. The girl in this situation is 15, 180 pounds, and known for being a bully. She got mad at my brother, who was 22 at the time, for telling on her to her mom because she was having sex with her BF. So she told her mom that my brother raped her. It was complete BS, but the court system is such a POS, so he was sentenced. Anyway, long story short, he just completed a 6-year sentence in Maricopa County, as I really fear that he went through most of the things you all are mentioning. I will never ask him, as I expect he will never say anything. I'm from California and just turned 30 few weeks ago. I was incarcerated for 9 years, 1 month and 4 days at a level 3 maximum security facility. Most pedophiles known as PC for protected custody are kept away from GP for general population. PCs are despised in prisons and looked down upon. Years ago GP were mainline, meaning they have special privileges like schooling, visits, cells, special programs. Times have changed. Many inmates that are charged turn and snitch on others as a means to lower their sentencing, leading them to do time in PC. Many prisons are converting to PCs now, and GP is running low. PCs have more privileges now. Also, violent crimes must serve around 85% of their sentencing. Rape and non-violent crimes serve 50% if they're sentencing. A new law will make sex crimes serve a much harsher sentencing, but I have no updates about that matter. Prisons are overpopulated, but many offenders are sentenced too severely for minor offenses. Prisons are like a revolving door for inmates. There's no solutions offered in the prison systems. Many offenders re-off, and contributing to the recidivism ratio. I'm lucky I still have family, barely any friends, and determination to stay out of trouble because I have inflicted too much pain around my loved ones. I was young and should have known better, but drugs money lost track of my life, and influenced by the wrong people led me to FBI taking down the entire gang. I'm happy now with whatever I have. More is always better, but now I'm fine working my way towards a better life the right way. Corrections officer here. The pedo is the absolute bottom on the jail/prison scale. If someone was charged with lewd acts on a child, they sign themselves up for protective custody, meaning they are kept away from general population. If someone in GP is found to be a child molester, the inmates call them chisters. Chister the molester, they will be beaten severely. The rapists, it depends on individual inmates' stance. Some may think crimes against women are heinous, some may not. But no one, except the pedos, accepts lewd/lascivious acts on children, and they will be hurt. Never done any time, but I used to work in the medical department of a jail, got to know the ins and outs of the system pretty well. As many others here are saying, they are generally segregated. I will say that there are a few sexual offenders in jail that end up with roommates, and they always lie about what they're in for. While I worked there, we had one guy in general pop who was a child rapist in on several counts of it, and a nurse, who lost her job and nursing license for this, got mad at him, and yelled something about "you child rapist" in front of a bunch of other inmates. You couldn't blink before the jailers were grabbing him up and getting him out of there. He was immediately transported to a solo cell and had it put in his file that he could never go into general population, even on future bookings, or while back for court later on. The system is very cautious with sexual offenders, which I'm morally conflicted on. On one hand, it certainly isn't great for you to get the shit beaten out of you, or get raped while in jail, but on the other hand, fuck you for f***ing kids. The thing that upsets me the most, honestly, is that, in the jail I worked in, and its prison counterparts, so much manpower goes into protecting these types of inmates, that the nice inmates who are there for practically nothing totally slip through the cracks. We had one guy who suffered severe PTSD due to being raped almost daily in prison. I think he served a year for selling meth. He was a really attractive itty bitty scrawny white kid who was too afraid of everyone to stand up for himself, and it was just upsetting, because he was really nice to his cellmates and the jailers and nurses, just a guy who'd been in the system since he was 7 or 8 years old, orphaned as a toddler. That whole sad story, just turning dope to keep from living on the streets. I know I went off on a tangent there, but I guess my point is that I wish more time was spent on rehabilitating and helping people like him, rather than protecting the assholes who are in for real crimes. Not an ex-prisoner, but have a relevant story. A prison in my town had a riot, and it is known that all sorts of shit goes on in a riot. People killing each other, smashing everything that can be smashed. They even found a couple of high security doors, inches thick of solid steel, torn off and thrown. In one particular riot, the prisoners managed to get hold of a set of keys, and their first instinct was to try and break into the unit where all the vulnerable people are kept, that is, pedophiles, rapists, those who are at risk from the other prisoners. Many of the people in those units, once they realized what was going on, were hanging themselves before the other prisoners managed to get to them. I cannot imagine what they would do that would make hanging yourself better. While not in for sexual assault, my brother faced several beatings. He was charged with child abuse and running from the police. While I've never gotten the entire story, I have heard from many family members that he was feeding his son. His son kicked/bit, not to shore him, and then he dropped him. I've also heard that his son has brittle bone disease which played a part in it. He has had a really bad history with the cops and instinctively ran from them. Yeah, I know, he's not very smart. He ran several states away in a drunken haze. Once he sobered up, he came back and turned himself in. Anyway, enough of the backstory. I can only assume it received a decent bit of news coverage. This wasn't his first time, nor his last I'm sure, in prison, so he knew better than to tell people. About a week or two after he got there, he was in ICU with one side of his face smashed and collapsed in on itself, his own words. This happened at least 2 or 3 times before they moved him. Currently, he's in a different facility awaiting a retrial. The judge determined that he hadn't gotten fair representation. This will be lost in the shuffle for sure, but here goes. About 15 years ago I was locked up for pulling a gun on someone in a drug deal gone wrong. Since it was my first offense, I was young and wasn't a problem prisoner. I got a job inside on the cleaning crew. My job at the time was to go into the showers with this high pressure spray bottle and spray down everything with cleaning chemicals. I did this on every block in the prison, including the secure housing units. There were 2 of those, one for people in the hole and the other for new inmates on quarantine and protective custody inmates. There was an inmate who came in who was caught in the act by the girl's mother molesting her daughter. It was all over the newspapers, so everyone knew his name and what he looked like. 2 days after he arrived I went in to clean the SHU blocks. I recognized him as I walked past his cell towards the shower. On the way back out of the cell block, I shuffled through the cell block looking towards the pod where the COs were and, upon seeing that they weren't looking, stopped in front of his cell and sprayed chemicals all over him and his bed through the bars. When I finished, I turned around to start walking out and both of the COs were looking directly at me. I froze like a deer in the headlights because I figured I had just lost all my privileges and would probably get another 3 to 6 months to serve. One of them just gave me an approving nod and went back to reading his paper. There is no such thing as protection for baby rapists.